All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Highruler, and today's video is going to be talking about Marvel's Avengers. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about today, guys, including She-Hulk, Jane, the mystery character, as well as the staff of Konshu. Now, let's start with She-Hulk because I think this opens the door to a lot of the conversation that we are having right now. Now, Miller has speculated a lot on this, but what I do want to point out is that his tweet talking about She-Hulk being pushed from Q4 2021 because the MCU series delayed. I actually had an individual DM me basically corroborating that story. Now, this individual has passed on good information to me before, information that I trust and information that turned out to be correct. And because of that, I'm inclined to now believe that what Miller is saying is actually the truth. That She-Hulk at one point in time was supposed to come out at the end of last year, and that they basically had to delay it because of the MCU. And now, because of that, they're kind of scrambling to fill this content gap that we are obviously in. Now, that could also explain why you're seeing the Taskmaster villain sectors and obviously the Future Wasteland stuff come out, which then opens the door to kind of what is that patrol update going to look like now? Because obviously, some of that stuff was tied into the launch of Future Imperfect, those villain sectors. Some of that stuff was tied into the patrol update, and how is that going to shake out? So there's a lot of interesting questions there. But what I will say is that it does seemingly look like that She-Hulk delay, if that is to be true, and once again, based on the sourcing, I will believe that is true, really screwed up what they were doing, right? Because for anyone who doesn't know, obviously looking at kind of Paul Tassi and what he has been saying, he was saying Crystal Dynamics had said to him that the roadmap would be out before the end of the year. Now, if She-Hulk gets delayed at that point, right? So if they kind of get wind that She-Hulk is going to be delayed, and they're being told essentially by Marvel that they have to delay their, operation that includes She-Hulk, well, that kind of leaves them in a little bit of a pickle then, right? They have no new hero content coming out. Now, they don't know when that's going to take place. And some of what they have already said is that planning goes on in, a few different stages, right? That long-term planning in terms of like 9 months to a year. And then, obviously that 1 to 3 months, right? That we saw in the February development update, right? This is all stuff that Nick has kind of alluded to on Reddit. And I'm going to show you guys right here. So a lot of it comes down to is that their plans kind of get screwed up, right? Maybe not those long-term plans, but those short-term kind of like, here's what we have coming up for the next couple of months. That stuff all gets kind of tossed out the window at that point, right? Now, we've also known by some of their public comments that heroes can take 6 to 8 months to make, right? So a lot of that long-term work, right? So the stuff done on She-Hulk, right? The stuff done on Bucky or Captain Marvel, that stuff is already being worked on at that point, right? So a lot of that work isn't necessarily impacted the way you would think. It's a lot of like, okay, we have this update with this bug fixes and this sort of stuff. Like, where does it go at that point, right? So I do believe that at that point, if this is to be true, that delay really did kind of screw them up in a lot of different ways, right? Then Miller goes on to speculate that this could be the reason why the Echo character stuff really was starting to heat up at that time, right? It was a short-term fix to a short-term problem. And which is really interesting to think about because I think when you look at, Jane, I think there's a multitude of reasons that Crystal Dynamics could really even want her in the game, right? Of course, Crystal Dynamics have gone on to say that they would really like another flyer in the game. They would really like someone who is able to kind of get up there with Iron Man and Thor and, somewhat of Spider-Man, but obviously he's not really a flyer. He's kind of just there for obviously the web swinging. So for me, when I look at that, it really does make sense that they would pick Jane. Now, the question then becomes for anyone who's kind of kept up with the leaks is why not War Machine? Well, what I will say to that is that for a game that really tries to, distance themselves from the MCU, they've really leaned a lot on it, right? You'll have developers go on and say like, the MCU doesn't really influence anything they do. But I mean, is that really true? It's tough to say that it is true, right? Like, of course, the MCU influences everything the game does, right? It's one of those things that is very apparent, right? From obviously the MCU skins and obviously some of the characters they use. The MCU plays a broad role in terms of what a lot of the Marvel games do at this point. So for me, when I look at that and I say, okay, Jane's getting a big push this year in Thor: Love and Thunder, it makes a lot of sense for them to do obviously Jane at that point for their game. It satisfies obviously the short-term problem of that content drought. It satisfies the problem of not having another flyer in the game, and it satisfies the problem of 6 to 8 months of development time. If you take what you have with Thor and you repurpose what you already have there, you cut that development time by quite a bit at that point, right? Obviously not, to the point where you're able to get her out within a couple of months, but is that 3 months? Is that 4 months maybe? I mean, at that point, it's still better than 6 to 8 months, right? So for me anyways, I'm looking at that. I'm seeing Jane makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons that satisfy all these different boxes that you can put a check mark in, right? makes a lot of sense there. In terms of the character coming to the game itself, I mean, Miller is very kind of strong on his wording that she is still going to come to the game. So I hope to see Jane soon. I mean, we're getting to the end of March now. I think a lot of people are starting to ask themselves, when is 2021 end in terms of the roadmap just being announced or launched? And what does that mean for some of the characters coming to the game? How many characters come to the game? What kind of content do you see, right? Those are whole conversations that are taking place right now. And those conversations will now heat up again because of obviously a lot of this news now coming about Jane and the She-Hulk delay and all that sort of stuff, right? So interesting stuff there. But let's shift gears now and talk about obviously Moon Knight. Now, and this is an interesting one because Miller a few days ago on his stream dropped some information about the staff of Konshu and Moon Knight and all sorts of stuff, which sent a lot of people into questioning about what is going to happen there, right? Now, I know there was some speculation that the staff of Konshu could come out in 2.3, which is in a few days. What I will say, though, is that I'm going to base this off some information that Brian has talked about publicly, right? Now, Brian has talked about how they're looking at their events and trying to kind of purpose them or refabricate them, whatever kind of word you want to use to kind of make them better, right? So what I imagine is happening is that their events, ever since they kind of launched, has seen engagement go down, right? And that would make sense, right? Because the rewards haven't changed, right? Now, that is in 2.4, which, as we know, is probably going to be April, right? They do their big patches a month apart. When I heard the staff of Konshu, to me, it made sense that if they were going to do anything with the staff of Konshu, it would be in 2.4, right? If you make it a kind of reward at the end of the event, it kind of gives people a purpose to get in there, right? So from my understanding, there's a few events that are going to be staying and probably some new events that are going to be rotating in, right? I think they had talked about that Red Room and the Corrupted Vibranium would be events that they would kind of keep. And then obviously, I would expect them to kind of bring in some new ones as well, right? So for me, when I look at the staff of Konshu, it makes sense as a event reward. You get in, you play the event, you get the staff of Konshu Major Artifact, and that to me is a really good incentive to get in there, right? You can do another nameplate if you want, but something that's gameplay focused would be a really good idea to get in there and kind of do with that. Now, in terms of Moon Knight himself, so I had some people come to my stream tonight and be like, Highruler, what about Moon Knight? It's not happening, guys. I mean, when you look at kind of where they're at right now and you kind of look at everything that's gone on, right? We can look at, obviously, Perfect Dark is taking resources away from Avengers. Tomb Raider is taking resources away from Avengers. Avengers is running on the crew that they have. And, who knows, what kind of content we're going to get this year, whatever year we have left when the roadmap launches. It's tough to say any sort of characters outside of the ones that have been data mined are going to be coming to the game this year, even if, Captain Marvel is bleeding over into 2023 at this point. In terms of Moon Knight himself, I would not expect him anytime soon. And if he were to show up, I mean, take it as a big surprise and kind of just be happy it happened. To me, it's not happening in any time soon in any sort of time frame that I'd be comfortable saying. 2023 maybe, I mean, at that point, but I mean, who really knows where we're all going to be in 2023 at that point, right? And that's kind of just where everything is. So I just want to drop some information, obviously, talk about it a little bit because I think there's a lot of juicy bits there. Obviously, that She-Hulk stuff, which I got corroborated information on as well. The Jane Foster stuff and how it fits into what Crystal Dynamics really want. And then the staff of Konshu potentially showing up in 2.4 as an event reward could be really cool. I don't see it in 2.3 personally, but you never know at that point, right? So that's it, guys. That's end of the video today. Thank you guys so much for checking this out and listening to me ramble for a little bit about this stuff. We'll kind of have to see it the next few days go, the next few weeks go. I would really like to see a roadmap, within a couple of weeks. I've always said that if they leave March, without a roadmap, it's not really the greatest of looks, but we'll just have to wait and see how it all pans out at this point, right? So with that being said, guys, that is the end of the video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time here on the channel. Enjoy the rest of your day and night. Take care of yourselves. Later, guys.